So we will go forward with the lecture, continuation of our lecture. And so I will just bring it. Okay. So previous lectures, let's review. We studied about the history and the purpose of the history of that God has created restoration through indemnity. The purpose is one thing. Why God has been leading the history of humankind? There was one purpose, that the Messiah can be born. Because only the Messiah can root out that original sin that is existing in every single human being, that every single human being has inherited through the lineage of connected to the archangel Lucifer. So humankind, instead of inheriting God's creativity, God's good nature, God's beauty, God's characteristics, inherited all the fallen natures that Lucifer and Satan had. That's why God was thinking after the fall of the Adam and Eve, how can I restore back this humankind? Of course, it cannot be done over a night, right? Restoration, it takes time. It needs paying indemnity. It needs to go to a formula. It needs to follow the principle. So immediately after the family of Adam and Eve, that they fell, God has started the providence with Cain and Abel. So if the Cain and Abel got victory, Messiah could be born in that family of Adam, and God and the humankind and God could achieve their goal and the purpose very fast. But Cain killed Abel, so God become heartbroken but never give up. Yes, God becomes sad but never give up. That's not character and personality of God, that he give up. There is nothing called giving up, because God's nature is absolute, eternal, and unchanging. His will be realized definitely. So this concept that his will can be realized is giving us hope, right? Don't you feel hope when we say that God is absolute, eternal, and unchanging, and his will is absolute, eternal, and unchanging? It gives us hope, right? Why? Because we will have this conviction that one day that ideal world and all the suffering that comes from the fall will be removed from human history, and humanity will live in joy and happiness together with our heavenly parents forever and forever. And uh, the tears of suffering will be removed and changed with the tears of joy and happiness. So this gives us hope. Be hopeful. All of us, we need to be hopeful. We need to be excited. We need to live with hope, because that ideal world is coming, will be realized, because God, our heavenly parents, is absolute, unchanging, and eternal. So today we are going to study more details about the second advent. So we study about the history, the parallels of the history, that history has repeated. Why history has been repeated? Because humankind failed to do their portion of responsibility. So the same history again repeated. So what was that? We studied about the Old Testament age, which is the history of Israelites, and the same parallel history with the same numbers, with the same event happened in the New Testament age, which the history of Christianity, how Christianity developed, how Christianity was preparing as a chosen people to receive the second coming of the Messiah. After the parallelism, we discussed about the last 400 years of preparation for the Messiah. If you remember, last 400 years preparation to receive the Jesus Christ started from Prophet Malachi. So Prophet Malachi made a lot of reformations. The people of Israel, they start to repent, reform, renew their faith to God and their commitment to receive the Messiah. The same thing happened in 1915 with Martin Luther King, that he started reformation in the church. He renewed, reawakened. It was a great awakening for the Christianity in the Europe, that they start to reform their faith, renew their faith, their commitment, their spirituality to receive the Messiah. So after the 400 years that we discussed, the end of the 400 years, we had three world wars, right? So first World War was the preparation to fulfill the first blessing. What is the first blessing? First blessing is individual perfection. So it ended in 1918, and so since that 400 years also will be ended in 1918, and the World War One finished at that time also, so that is giving us a news to prophecy that the Messiah will be born at that, around that time, that date, that years, around World War One. And the World War Two was the restoration of the second blessing, which is ideal family. So this gives us a prophecy about what is going to happen after the World War II. After World War II, an ideal marriage will happen. So in the World War III, which is depends on the which depends on the human portion of responsibility, it can be with weapons, or it can be ideological. So ideological conflict between two big blocks. What was that? Communism and democracy. And that is the preparation for creating an ideal environment, an ideal world, which is the third blessing. True dominion of humankind through the creation and nature and all the things that God has created, and will dominate it with true love. So we're going to study about the last chapter, which is the second advent. Return of the Jesus Christ. No one knew the day. And also, we learned that when the time of the Jesus Christ, God revealed his secrets to his prophets. So there are two things about the return of the Jesus Christ. One is that nobody knows about the day. It's in the Bible, Matthew chapter 24, verse 36 says that no one knew of the day, but there is another verse that talks about God will reveal his secret to his prophets. Exactly when Jesus Christ were born, those people that they would supposed to know about his coming, they came to know about him. Like Zechariah knew about the birth of the Jesus Christ. Uh, Mary knew, Joseph knew, right? So they receive revelation that the Messiah will be born. So the same manner, when the second coming of the Messiah happened, there would be people, there would be churches that they are supposed to know and prepare to welcome the Messiah. They will receive revelation that the Messiah will come and will be born on the earth. So we will discuss more on details. So Jesus clearly foretold of his return. Yet he added that no one knew of the day and hour of his return. Nevertheless, we can deduce from the scriptural verses, surely the Lord God does nothing without revealing his secrets to his servants, the prophets. That God will surely reveal all secrets about the second advent of his prophets before he carries out his work. Accordingly, God will certainly give prophecies to those faithful believers who are in the light. So, about the second coming of the Jesus Christ, if you want to know that what churches, what people, what specific people receive revelation to receive the Messiah, you have to go to the three holy scriptures and study the three holy scriptures clearly explain about what churches they have been waiting for the second coming of the Messiah and where. We call the time of Christ's second advent the last days. As was already explained in eschatology, we are living in the last days today. We can thus understand that today is truly the times of the second Christ return. So if we calculate the first 2000 years from Abraham to Jesus, 2000 years, it took 2000 years, Old Testament, that Jesus Christ was born on the earth. The same manner, if we calculate the same formula, repeat the same history in the form of the New Testament age, we will reach to 2000 years, and it shows that from the time of Jesus until the returning Christ, second coming of the Christ, it will take 2000 years. And of course, from 1517 to, if we add 400 years, it will end up to the 1918. So Jesus Christ, second coming of the Messiah, will happen after 1918. We call the time of Christ's second advent the last days. Okay, so we read this. As can be seen in the above chart, Jesus came at the conclusion of the 2000-year-long Old Testament age, the age of the providence of restoration. The principle of restoration through indemnity leads us to infer that Christ is to return at the end of the 2000-year-long New Testament age of the prolongation of the providence of restoration, which has been restoring the previous age through substantial parallel conditions of indemnity. So how did we understand that? So you see, divine principle is so systematic and logical. Everything is in the proper place and very logical and systematic. The most systematic teachings that is explaining and can predict about the second coming of the Messiah has been explained in the divine principle. So this divine principle is amazing truth that we can realize many things, not just by the prophecy, but by logic, by clear understanding of the process of the history, we can realize that when is the second coming of the Messiah. We can thus conclude that the period of Second Advent began soon after the end of the First World War. In interpreting the Bible, the most important matter is to find the right perspective, to see it from the right perspective. You see, there are many kinds of interpretation in the Bible, right? That's one of the reasons that we have many churches, and because everybody is interpreted with their own understanding, and then they create a new church, and they are arguing that my understanding is the correct understanding. But how really we can understand the Bible if you have the right perspective? And who can reveal that right perspective is only the Messiah can reveal the secrets of the Bible clearly and logically. At the first coming of Jesus, there were undoubtedly many Jews who on biblical grounds expected the Messiah to come on the clouds. Even at the time of Jesus, many people, they have been waiting for the Jesus to come back, to come, to be born, or to come on the clouds. They believed that. But in actuality, however, Jesus was born on the earth as a child in a lowly family. So you see, it's very tricky. The Jewish people, Israelites, they have been waiting for the Messiah in a miraculous way, to see the Messiah, to receive the Messiah in a miraculous way. But how did Jesus Christ came? He was born on the earth in a lowly family, a simple young man. This is the main thing that can happen, the second coming of the Messiah. That's why we the believers of the Christianity has to be aware, has to pray a lot, that not to make the same mistake that the Israelites have done. You know that what happened to the Israelites after that, right? When they crucified Jesus Christ, they were scattered all around the world. And they paid incredible indemnity over the history. So much suffering. And even the descendants of the Israelites, they had to pay incredible persecution in the under the Hitler, right? Hitler persecuted 6 million Jewish people. They were killed in the Second World War. Just because of what? Divine Principle explained that is the indemnity, collective indemnity, because of the mistakes of the not receiving Jesus Christ at that time, and crucifying and persecuting him, persecuting the Son of God. So the same manner that can happen, we need to learn from the history, and we need to be aware of not repeat the same mistake. That's why we are studying about the history in the Divine Principle. So history is so important in the Divine Principle. Why? Because we learn not to make the same mistakes, not to do the same mistakes that the people, the chosen people of the history, they made a mistake. If we learn it and repeat it with ourselves and pray for that, we would not definitely make the same mistake. But if we don't learn it and we just read it without any repentance, we may have the same mistakes actually. So hence we should re-examine the Bible from the perspective that the second advent of Christ may not take place in a miraculous way. It may, in fact, take place in the same manner as the first advent. So in the first advent of the Jesus Christ, Zachariah's family, they receive revelation that Jesus Christ will be born. Mary received revelation that Jesus Christ will be born. Joseph received a revelation that Jesus Christ will be born on the earth. And even John the Baptist received revelation about Jesus Christ. So all these people, what was their mission and responsibility? To testify and protect Jesus Christ. That was their mission. That's why God gave revelation to them. For what? To protect the Messiah. To protect the Messiah. To work with the Messiah. To unite with the Messiah, that the Messiah can fulfill his responsibility and restore humankind to fulfill three great blessings. What is the three great blessings that has been given to humankind? First, individual perfection. Second, to make an ideal family and make four position foundation: God, man, woman, and the child. This is a four position foundation that should have been established in the Messiah's family. After that, multiplication, and from the individual will become a family, ideal family. From ideal family will make an ideal tribe. An ideal tribe will be expanded and will build an ideal nation. An ideal nation will be become a model for other nations to be restored. So this is the formula. The formula starts from one individual person, one man and a woman. Make a family, make an ideal tribe, ideal society, ideal nation, and ideal world. Why? Because the same thing, evil multiplied with the same pattern. Evil started from Adam and Eve and then multiplied in the family level. Family, they become a tribe. The tribe formed a nation, and then the evil multiplied all around the world. So this is a very important matter, that we know what is the formula. You know, peace cannot be realized from the United Nations or the organizations that have been working for peace. If they were able to realize peace, already we would have peace on the earth. But we see that the situation of the world is becoming, more complicated. Why? Because the formula for peace starts from individual. Peace begins with me as an individual. And when I am an peaceful individual, I will make a peaceful family. A peaceful family will make a peaceful society around. Peaceful community. Peaceful communities will make a peaceful nation. So this formula is very important to understand it. It looks like simple, but we need to really, truly understand. If we truly understand this formula of the reaching to peace and restoration of the world, then for us it would be more easier to overcome the difficulties that we are having, right? So individual problems, if you have, or family problem and issues that we have, we need to remove our work and remove our fallen natures. So in Luke 17:25, Jesus made a prediction. about the Lord at his return. But first he must suffer many things and be rejected by this generation. So Jesus Christ predicted that when the Messiah comes in the second advent, he will be persecuted. If Jesus were to literally return on the clouds of heaven, would he not readily be accepted and honored even by this sin-ridden world? Right? So if we accept the prophecy that says that the Messiah will come on the clouds, so it's a miraculous way, right? If the Messiah comes on the clouds, it's a miraculous way. Even those people who don't believe, non-believers, they would believe because they see that, wow, this is so amazing, so miraculous that the Messiah has appeared on the clouds. And everybody would believe and follow the Messiah. But Jesus Christ said that when he comes, he will be rejected and persecuted. He had to go through the suffering. So it means that he is not going to come in a miraculous way. The Messiah is going to come in a simple way that the first advent of the Messiah happened. He will be born as a simple man, that the people would have a challenge to accept him, and even the people will persecute him, will reject him. Even those people who are waiting for the Messiah will persecute him. Jesus foresaw that at the second advent, the Christians would be likely to persecute the Christ and condemn him as a heretic when he is born in the flesh. That is why he foretold that the Lord would suffer and be rejected by his generation. This prophecy in Luke can never be fulfilled unless the returning Christ is born on the earth. So we have to have a humble heart to receive the Messiah. If we do not have a humble heart and purity, we may not see and receive the Messiah, even though the Messiah appear in front of us, but we may not recognize the Messiah. So it's so important that we learn from the mistakes of the Israelites. That what happened to the Israelites, that they rejected Jesus. Why they crucified him? Why they went through, he had to go through so much persecution. So it is very well explained in the Divine Principle about the Jesus course. In Matthew chapter 7, verse 22 to 23, Jesus said, "On that day many will say to me, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and cast out demons in your name, and do many mighty works in your name? And then will I declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you evildoers." Why Jesus had to tell to his believers? To those people who believe in him, they did miracles, they cast out the demons, and then Jesus Christ is condemning those people, and he's telling them, I never knew you, depart from me. Why Jesus Christ is angry to those people? There is one reason. They may reject when the Messiah come again. No matter what is how strong is your faith, how many miracles you have been doing in the name of Jesus Christ, but If you cannot recognize the Messiah at the second advent, will lose the chance to accompany this Messiah in his second advent. So painful. That's why in the Bible says that the last would be the first and the first would be the last. Those who are prepared to receive the Messiah, if they miss the chance to recognize the Messiah, what will happen? The chance will be given to those who were supposed to be the last people to be restored. The same thing happened, you know, at the time of Jesus Christ. What happened? Those Pharisees and religious leaders in the Jewish time, they were the one, high priest, they were the one that they have been in the position to receive Jesus Christ. But they missed the chance. They lost the opportunity. And the chance was given to whom? Those tax collectors, fishermen, those very lowly people in the society. They became his disciples, Jesus Christ's disciples. The thief on the right, the thief, the one who committed crime, lowly place in the society according to social status, was the first one who believed in Jesus Christ on the cross in the last moment. So you see, the thief that was supposed to be restored, the last person, because committed a lot of mistakes, because he believed in Jesus Christ in the last minute, he was the one, Jesus Christ was able to ascend to the paradise with Jesus Christ. And those people that they have been waiting for the Messiah for many years, they missed the chance. The same thing can happen in the second coming of the Messiah. Many people, many Christians, because this is the prophecy of the Jesus Christ. He said that when he comes, he will be persecuted by his people. At the second advent of Christ, those Christians who expect his miraculous and glorious appearance will almost certainly reject him if he comes in the flesh of humble birth. No matter how faithful they may be, the Lord will be left with no choice but to abandon them because they will have transgressed against God. No matter how many years we are praying, how many years of devotion we offer, if we cannot receive the Messiah, or if we receive the Messiah, cannot stay with the Messiah to fulfill his mission until the end, all those years of devotion will be in vain. Hence, this prophecy also cannot be fulfilled if Jesus comes on the clouds. There are two reasons. Why did Jesus say that the Lord will come on the clouds? Will come on the clouds. Yes. So why? Why did Jesus give this prophecy? Number one, to prevent the delusions of Antichrist. Because Jesus Christ knew that many people after Jesus Christ will come and will proclaim that I am the Christ. I am the second coming of the Messiah. To avoid that the Christians would not be confused gave this prophecy that he will come on the clouds. Number two, second, it was to encourage Christians who were walking a difficult path of faith. So Jesus Christ told them that I will come back soon. That gives hope to these disciples, because he knew that his disciples, after his ascension to the paradise, they have to go through so much suffering and persecution. Because Jesus Christ was persecuted and crucified, his disciples and his believers had to go to the same destiny. So Jesus Christ knew that. Psychologically, gave this prophecy that he will come back soon, that his disciples can overcome the persecution and suffering with hope. So the first one, that to prevent the delusion of the Antichrist, okay. So, but how do we understand that the second advent, the person who would be the second advent of the Messiah, would be the right person? Two reasons. Two evidence. One is that he will interpret the Bible, secrets of the Bible, secrets hidden over the history in the different religions. He will interpret it, and it's logical, understandable for the people of this age. So how do we understand who is the Messiah? We will not be confused. Number one, he will interpret the Bible correctly from the right perspective. Number two, look at the fruits, achievements, and the works of that person. Through his fruits and achievements, we will understand that he has come as the mission of the Messiah. So the hopes of Jesus' imminent return inflamed the zeal of his disciples and gave them the strength to overcome persecution by Judaism and the Roman Empire. Encouraged by the ardent hope of the second advent, they were filled with the Holy Spirit and established the early Christian church, even amidst great adversity. Because they had the hope, because Jesus told him that he will come back soon. So they believed that Jesus Christ will come back during their lifetime. So they were fighting. They had this kind of hope inside, in this flame inside, that helping them to overcome the persecution. So where will Christ return? Where? So how the Christ will be born, how the Christ will return, we already studied. He will be born on the earth. Now, the next one is that where will the Christ will return? Will Christ return among the Jewish people? But in the Bible, if we go to Matthew 10, verse 10, chapter 10, verse 23, and Matthew chapter 16, 28, it says that some Christians expect that Christ will come again among the Jewish people based on such passages as mentioned in the Bible, Revelation, Matthew 10 and 16. So, but Jesus clearly conveyed that he would not come again to the people who persecuted him. God will take away the mission previously entrusted to them and give it to another people who can produce its fruits upon Christ's return. Not among the Jewish people, but who are the chosen people? Those who inherit the faith of Jesus Christ. Therefore, the chosen people after Jesus' crucifixion are not the descendants of Abraham, but rather the Christians who have inherited the faith of Abraham. So, New Testament age is the history of Christianity. So God has been preparing Christianity in the worldwide level to receive and prepare for the second coming of the Messiah as chosen people. So Revelation chapter 7 verse 2 to 4 indicates that the seal of the living God will be placed on the foreheads of the 144,000 in the east where the sun rises. So it's in the Bible, very clear. 144,000 people who will support the Messiah in fulfilling his mission in the east. Clearly, very clear, in the east. Revelation chapter 14 verse 1 says that these chosen ones will accompany the Christ at his return, fulfill his mission, will accompany him, will assist him, will protect him, will unite with him to fulfill and complete his mission. We can thus infer that the nation which will inherit the work of God and bear its fruit for the sake of the second advent is in the east, because clearly in the Bible says that the people who are living in the east. Where is the east? Since ancient times, the nations in the east have traditionally been considered to be three nations. One is Korea, Japan, China. These three nations are recognized as Eastern nations, the nations who are in the East. So let's see one by one. Japan entered the period of the Second Advent. When was the Second Advent period? From 1918 onwards, right? We studied that. After 2,000 years history of the Christianity, after 2,000 years, the Messiah will be born. Based on what? Based on the parallel history that we study. So, at that time, Japan was a fascist nation and severely persecuted Korean Christianity at that time. So, Japan cannot be the nation that the Messiah can be born. How can the Japanese people be the chosen people to receive the Messiah? At that time, Japan was persecuting Korean people, Christianity, and several Asian countries has been colonized and dominated by the Japanese people. So the Messiah cannot be born in this kind of nation at that time. China at this time means after 1918, when we enter to the time of the advent of the second coming of the Messiah. China at this time was a hotbed of communism and would become a communist nation. So China cannot be a chosen nation to receive the Messiah. Why? Because China is a communist nation. How can the Messiah can come in a communist nation that they don't believe in God? So China is not that nation also. Thus, both nations belong to Satan's side. Korea then is the nation in the east where Christ will return. So one nation will remain. What is that nation? Korea. Korea is in the east. We study more about the qualification, why Korea is that chosen nation. As the nation to which the Messiah returns, Korea had to meet the following qualification. What is that? For Korea to become a nation fit to receive the Messiah, it had to fulfill a national dispensation of 40 for the separation of Satan, for the cosmic level restoration of Canaan. If Christ returns to Korea on this foundation, the Korean people are destined to become the third Israel. So the same manner, let's go back to the time of the Old Testament. Israelites, they had to go to 400 years of persecution to become qualified to be considered as the chosen people at that time. So the same manner, Korean people had to go through so much suffering of the same number, multiplication of number 4. That's why at that time, Korean people were persecuted for 40 years under Japanese imperialism, and they paid so much in them, so much incredibly hardship under the Japanese rule. As the third Israel, the Korean people had to suffer under a nation on Satan's side for a period which fulfills the number 40. Thereby, they could fulfill a dispensation of 40 for the separation of Satan as required to commence the cosmic level course to restore Canaan. So, as we explained, 40 years of persecution under the Japanese uh, colonization. And if we look at the history of Korean people never, never, never attacked to any other nation. Peaceful, the most peaceful people on the earth, I think, the Korean people. Never attacked. Opposite, they were always being attacked by the powers around their nation. Several times. Several times they have been attacked by other nations, but with the wisdom, with sacrifice, they were able to keep and protect their nation. With patriotism, they were able to protect their nation. So these are the qualification of a chosen nation, chosen people. They went through this kind of tests to test their faith, to test their commitment, to train them to become filial people, to become patriots. And also, from the other side, the Korean people, from the beginning of their history, they were worshipping God, one God, Hananim. That's why in Korean, the name of God is Hananim. Hananim. Hana means what? The only God. So that's the only nation. The nation that they were worshipping one God in their history. The Korean people suffered under Japan for 40 years, from the Ulsa Treaty of Protection of 1905 to their liberation in 1945. Their suffering paralleled the hardships of the first Israel in Egypt and the second Israel in the Roman Empire. So they went through so much suffering. The suffering was so much that even the resentment, even now, Korean people still, they have resentment over the Japanese people. If you go to the Seoul, you will see that there is a museum. There's a museum of how the Japanese people, they persecuted, the Korean people, and they kept that, resentment and cannot forget so much suffering they had to go through it. At the point of confrontation between God and Satan, a sacrifice must be offered as the condition to determine the outcome of their struggle. The Korean people were this sacrifice, placed on this front line of battle to be offered for the sake of the restoration of the universe. Therefore, God divided the Korean nation, just as Abraham's sacrifices were supposed to be divided. This is the reason behind the division of Korea by the 38th parallel, which is split into two nations, one Cain tribe and the other Abel tribe. The 38th parallel is the front line of battle between democracy and communism. So the front line battle of the communism and democracy is in Korea. and only nation divided between the two ideology, two system. One is communism and one is democracy. So, and this nation of Korea had to become a sacrifice for the sake of the restoration of the world. And they had to go through so much suffering. In North Korean people, you know, they had to go through so much suffering. There is a kind of hunger and starvation is happening in North Korea. So much suffering. And even the South Korean people also, they are living in the kind of fear all the time, because they're you know, north from the north is always threatening the south that they will attack with the missiles, or you know, that kind of situation. So it's not a kind of peaceful situation in this peninsula. Why? Because it's symbolizing of Cain and Abel, the front line between the fight between Cain and Abel. So when Cain and Abel unite together, that's the time that the world restoration will happen. If you remember, in the time of the family of the Isaac, Jacob and Esau, when Jacob and Esau embrace each other as a Cain and Abel victoriously, then that was a victory for God that could move forward, and the Israelites were born, and the providence could move forward. The same manner, when the North and South Korea unite together, become one nation again, that's the time of the world restoration. The world will be restored quickly. When these two worlds came into global conflict, it was centered on the Korean Peninsula. Religions, ideologies, political forces, and economic systems all came into conflict and caused great confusion in Korean society, which then had worldwide impact. So Korea is a kind of micro world, microcosm. All the sufferings, all the conflicts that the world is experiencing in the world level, Korean people are experiencing in their nation. So it's a God's front line and Satan's front line to fight with each other, because Korea is the nation and chosen people. That's why there's kind of division has happened. Okay, to become the object partners of God's heart, we must first walk a path of blood, sweat, and tears. How can we, as loyal and faithful children, be comfortable and complacent and still expect to remain the object partners of our Heavenly Father, who is suffering in deep agony? The miserable history, the Korean people was the path required of the chosen people of God. So why Korean people went through so much suffering, history of suffering? Because God wanted this nation, these people, to experience his heart, to experience the heart of the agony and suffering that God went through after the fall of his children. So that's one of the things. So they went to the path of blood, sweat, and tears to get the qualification. Number two, the nation qualified to stand as an object partner of God's heart must be a people of goodness. The homogeneous Korean people rarely invaded other nations. So peaceful people. Number three, the Korean people are by nature endowed with a religious character. They have evinced a strong desire to worship God and always revere their virtues of loyalty, filial piety, and chastity. So it's into their culture. Loyalty, filial piety, and chastity has been integrated into their culture. Worshipping God has been integrated to their daily life. So you can see that even in their national anthem, South Korea national anthem, there is a part, if you see that the God protects our nation. So it means that God has a very important role in this nation. And then filial piety is part of their culture towards the parents. Respecting to the elders is part of their culture. If you go to the Korean family, um, the grandchildren, the children, when they go and visit their grandparents, so what they have to do, the first thing they have to do is that they will give a full bow, will offer to their grandparents. And chastity, purity is part of their culture, uh, has been integrated. Who has been integrating these things into the culture of the Korean people? God has been integrating these important characteristics into this culture. Why? Because this nation, these people are being destined to selected as chosen people to receive the Messiah at the second advent. So they need to have this qualification into their culture. The Korean people have believed in the prophecy that the righteous king will appear and found a glorious and everlasting kingdom in their land. This messianic idea was revealed through the Changamnok, a book of prophecy written in the 14th century Korea. Clearly, this book explained that the king will appear among the Korean people, a righteous king that will bring peace to the world. So messianic idea among the Korean people. So there was a prophecy in this nation. The same that there was a prophecy among the Israelites, Jewish people. They received prophecies by the Malachi, by the prophets, that the Messiah will be born in that nation of the Judaism. The same manner, in 14th century, there is a book of the prophecy that says that the Messiah, a messianic figure, a righteous king, will be born among the Korean people. Number two, among the faithful of every religion in Korea are those who have received revelations that the founders of the religions will return to Korea. So revelations, founders of the religions receive revelation that the founders will be born in Korea, will return to Korea. Revelations and signs are being given to spiritually attuned Christians, testifying to the second coming of Christ in Korea. They are sprouting in profusion like mushrooms after a rain. So many, as we study, that God will reveal his secrets before to his people, to those righteous people. So many Christian groups, spiritual groups, they receive clear revelation that the Messiah will be born in Korea. Even they receive revelation of the size of the spiritual groups, size of the Messiah through the spiritual world that they made, and they made clothes for the Messiah, some spiritual groups. If you go to the autobiography of True Mother, if you study that, it's clearly explained about that, those spiritual groups. And also in three holy scriptures, if you go and study, it clearly talks about the how the spiritual groups and Christian groups, they receive revelation that the Messiah will be born among them. Hence, many are receiving clear revelations that the Lord will come to Korea. So these are many prophecies and the signs that are happening. So spiritual and material aspects of civilization developing from religion and science, which have flourished all over the world, will be embraced and harmonized in Korea as guided by the new truth. Then they will bear fruit in the ideal world of God's deepest desire. So we studied that spiritual civilization will bear fruit in Korea. We see that all Christianity developed in Korea, different religions existing in Korea and living together in peaceful manner. And the same thing, externally, this nation will develop. If you look at the uh, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, Korea was among poorest countries in the world because of the war, Korean War that has happened. Completely destroyed. This nation completely destroyed. Pile of ashes. How is it possible within 20, 30 years, this country, 40 years, this country become among top nations, industrial nations in the world? The only explanation that I can give is that God is behind this nation. God is behind the nation of Korea and helping Korea to develop. Now you see the culture, Korean culture also is flourishing. The K-pop music, is become very famous. Dramas, Korean dramas are very famous, becoming very famous in the world. The people are watching, they like to watch. Korean movies are becoming very popular. So all the things will be gathered and will be flourished in Korea. And it will be guided by the new truth. That's very important. If Korean people adopt the new truth, this development and this flourishing will be faster. And Korea will be, the advancement, technology, and all the external and internal matter of Korea will be speed up, would be much more faster if they become mobilized with the new truth. So the essence of all civilization will develop on the land should bear fruit in Korea. So civilization of the land. So essence of civilization born on the shores of rivers and seas should bear fruit in the Pacific civilization to which Korea belongs. So civilization started from the rivers and seas, right? So rivers, Euphrates, civilization, the first civilization started there, and then go to the Mediterranean Sea, then went to the Pacific Ocean, and then it will be moving to the east, which is Korea belongs. Civilization born out of different climate zones should bear fruit in the temperate zone civilization of Eden, which is Korea. So if human beings had not fallen, we would have formed one global family, like one body with God as the head. If Adam and Eve did not fall, we did not have this division in this world. We did not have different kinds of nationalities. We did not have different kinds of language. We did not have different kinds of culture. What we had one global family centering on God. No barrier. Because of the fall, all these barriers has been created. What are the barriers? Barrier of the religion, barrier of the culture, barrier of the language, barrier of the nationality has been created because of the fall of Adam and Eve. Then there never would have risen a profusion of tongues unintelligible to one another. We wouldn't have confusion of the language like what we have at this time on the earth? How we can tell to we are one global family, brother and sister, when we cannot understand each other language? So we cannot be truly brothers and sisters, right? So why this confusion has happened? Because of the fall of Adam and Eve. Because Satan dominated the world, has been working continuously to make disunity inside of the people, to make disunity in the families between husband and wife, has been working continuously to make disunity among the people of a one nation. Even we see this unity among the people of even one nation. We see the division, barriers, even in one nation. In every nation you go nowadays, you see there are barriers. There are the barriers of language, culture, ethnicity, even within one nation. And then go to the world level, we see so many barriers, so many things are separating us, separating brothers and sisters from each other. So who is behind this division? Who is behind this division is Satan, that has been working continuously to divide humankind. One day, the descendants of the Noah's second son Ham, who had sinned against God, built the Tower of Babel to exalt themselves even above God, thus furthering the will of Satan. When the descendants of Shem and Japheth, who stood on God's side, helped with the construction, God brought such confusion to their languages that they could no longer communicate with each other to further the will of Satan, so that they cannot communicate. So this is a biblical account of the wider division of the language happened. As offspring of the same parents, all of us have the same feelings of joy, anger, sorrow, and pleasure. Yet we cannot share our deepest feelings with one another because we speak different languages. Is not this one of humanity's greatest misfortune? Yes, this is the greatest misfortune. That's why if we look at the world and the trend, the progress of the world is going towards one unified language. You may not notice, but there are many languages are disappearing. They don't exist anymore because that's God's will. What is God's will? God's will is to create one unified world, one family, that everybody, brother or sister, can understand each other. So that's why look at the even technology is making the people to go towards one unified language. That's why everybody is learning English, right? So it's like the language of the technology. Why? Because this is God's will, that everybody can communicate with each other. If we are to realize the ideal world of one global family which can honor Christ at the second advent as our true parents, surely our languages must be unified. So if Christ does indeed return to Korea, the Korean language will become the mother tongue for all humanity, and all people should learn to speak it. We are learning, we are speaking with language. We are talking in our mother's parents' language because we were born from such a family, right? Like, for example, our parents speak in Portuguese. Then the children learn the parents' language. The parents speak in Tagalog, so the children learn in Tagalog. So if the Messiah, true parents, will be born in Korea, so we as a children, what is our responsibility? We have to learn our parents' language. So this is very important that we learn Korean language, because we study now that how will the Messiah will come, will return. He will be born on the earth the same manner that the first advent of the Messiah, Jesus Christ, he was born on the earth. Even though there was prophecy that he will come on the clouds, but Jesus Christ was born on the earth. Second advent of the Messiah will happen, and he will born on the earth. Second, where will the Messiah will come? We study that in the Bible. It explains that 144,000 will 144,000 people will gather around the Messiah and will support him to complete his mission and responsibility in the East. Where is the East geographically? Three nations of China, Japan, and Korea. China and Japan, we studied that they are communist and on Satan's side. Korea was the one that had this kind of qualification to receive the Messiah at the time of the Advent. Of course, Japan now is in the side of God, right? So it's the Eve nation. So, okay, so this is the last slide. So hopefully, brothers and sisters, we need to receive the Messiah in our everyday life. How to do it? What is the formula? Foundation of faith, foundation of substance, we receive the Messiah. For you receive the blessing from true parents because you had the foundation of faith. You offer devotion. God saw your faith. And then based on that, and then foundation of substance, based on the foundation of your unity with your leader, with your able in the center, with your central figure, you had this unity that God has been able to give you blessing. So this is a very important point. And for more explanation, because this is anyway 3 hours, for you to understand more about those things that we studied today, about the how God has been preparing for the Messiah to be born in Korea, who are those spiritual groups, who are those Christian groups that have been prepared, receive revelations, three holy scriptures. I strongly suggest that you need to study carefully several times, then you will understand more deeply about the divine principles. So let's hand it over to our MC, and then have our sharing or any questions. We would be happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Rahim, Sir Rahim. Let's give a hand, brothers and sisters. So actually, before we begin we have another lecture actually, very short, from Aterlina. It's also about the Messiah. How can we recognize the Messiah? Without further ado, let's welcome Aterlina Donendo. Unmute ka te.
Good evening. Naririnig ako?
Yes, ate.
Ay, hindi naman. Google na naman. We have agreed to give this in addition to the second coming of the Messiah. The second coming, to include this as well on how do we recognize the Messiah. Paano natin? How do we recognize the Messiah? So, how do we recognize? So, what are these are the qualifications of the Messiah. As was discussed sa mga in the previous chapter, we should the Messiah must come from a chosen lineage. So, a chosen lineage who experience suffering, di ba? And who indemnified the mistakes of previous history. So, yung suffering na yon is a result of the mistake or a result of the fall, which is it was indemnified. That should be indemnified by the chosen lineage that would to where the Messiah should be coming. And then number 2, a living sacrifice. The number 2 qualification of the Messiah, he must have a record of a living sacrifice. It means they should have, the Messiah should have an absolute loyalty to God. The Messiah should have experienced a living sacrifice wherein he should be able to sacrifice even his life just to follow God's will. And number 2, qualification in the living sacrifice is the responsibility for absolute accomplishment of restoration. That means all should be the responsibility of the Messiah in order to restore. The Messiah should be able to save all of humanity. So all of humanity should be transformed or by the Messiah from the bondage of Satan or from the dominion of Satan to God's dominion. So regardless of religion, regardless of faith, regardless of nationality, and regardless of race. So everybody must be able, through the Messiah, everybody without exception must be able to receive salvation given by the as initiated or being led by the Messiah when he comes. And how do we recognize the Messiah? Based on Matthew chapter 7, verses 18 to 19. A good tree, it says that a good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Thus, by their fruit, you will recognize them. So we can recognize by the Messiah by its fruit or by its work, by the result of his way of life, the result of his works, just like the work of our true Father. Another qualification for the Messiah is that he knows and reveals the heart of God. And not like other in our modern world, people or most of religious teachers are always saying that God is all powerful, all all uh, all knowing, but then the Messiah must be able to tell all people how reveal the heart of God, which is He is a suffering God from the time of the fall of Adam and Eve until today. So the Messiah, in order to recognize the Messiah, we we should be able to he should be able to convey to all people the heart of God in the whole of the history of humanity, which is as the suffering God. Also, in order for us to recognize the Messiah, the Messiah must be able to express or discover the origin of evil and suffering. Why is it that the world is suffering, and what is the solution? If the Messiah was able to discover the cause of suffering, or the cause of the origin of evil, and then that's the time that that's where we can start to solve the problem. That's the one of the qualification in order for us to recognize the Messiah. Another qualification of the Messiah is that he teaches, the Messiah must be able to teach a new understanding of truth, not repeat the teachings that were given in the previous age or history of humankind. This teaching must be able to is uh, is dapat angkop siya yung teaching na sinasabi na tinuturo ng Messiah, mas dapat angkop siya sa makabagong panahon. And then another qualification of the Messiah is that it harmonizes all races, religions and nations. So the teaching of the Messiah must be able to harmonize all races. So, and that also religions and all nations. So the movement of the Messiah must be able, or the organizations or the activities of the Messiah must be able to solve all problems of humanity. Wherein the Messiah must be able to solve problems in religion. It can harmonize religion, in academics, in culture, in humanitarianism, international relations, media, and economics. So these are the qualifications of the Messiah. Knows and reveal. One is, in summary, one is he knows and reveals the heart of God, expresses the origin of evil and suffering, teaches the new understanding of truth, harmonizes all races and religions and nations, and initiate the practical strategy to restore the world. If you know someone, uh, do you know someone who has all these qualifications other than the Reverend Sang Myung Moon? Or has anybody, do you know anybody who is, as a Unification Church member, these are these are should be the qualifications of the Messiah that we must be looking for. And if somebody surpass these qualifications, so you should at least you should tell us so that we can know na we can prove or that, and this prove that our true father is the Messiah. In of all sa lahat ng in the history of Israel, in the first coming, there is always this prophecy of the coming of the Messiah through the Israelite people, wherein the Israelites has a yung story ng prophecy, and we can see that in the we can read that in the Old Testament. In our modern age, there is no nation wherein just like wherein there is a prophecy about wherein the Messiah must come. And it's only the nation of Korea that has the same prophecy like the Israelite people that we read in the Old Testament. So these are in the book of Chonggamo, in the Korean in Korean prophecy. Here are the, recorded messianic qualification found in the book of Korean prophecy. That one of them is that the holy man must be born north of the 38th parallel. So kung makikita nyo, if we're going to study it very well, Father was born in North Korea. So it is north of the 38th parallel. He is born with the spiritual fortune of unsurpassed Diamond Mountain in North Korea. He is richly blessed, a legendary Suksong Gong man of great blessing in the world. So dapat we should this this legendary, this you must research for this kung what this mean. Ano tong yung legend na to. He must have the experience of prison. So it is written in the Korea's book of prophecy that the Messiah must experience prison, and our true father has experienced prison 7 times, di ba? 7 times, including the helicopter. He must endure a difficult life of entrapment and walk a path through the land of death for the sake of being truthful, receive ridicule and unjust blame. Ito yung sinasabi dito, and true father has experienced this as well. Through yung yung tawag dito, yung pagpapahirap sa kanya sa prison. He is the one who will match and marry many good man and woman who believe in God. And this is the blessing. And then he is one who marries again. We know that father marries again. And then The place he appears in is under the Dragon Mountain, where in the center of Seoul, in a field of white sand, rooster crow and a dragon host. He take this place as a command post and provide direction to the world. So dito, saan ba nag-start ng saan ba nag-start si Father after World War One? No, the Second World War. Sa Seoul, di ba? He is the one who pursues the unity of religions. And marami tayong organization na ginawa si Father, and this includes the unity of religion. As a master of all religion, he is a universal man transcending East and West. So, Father is also known East and West, and he wanted to unite the East and West culture. He brings Confucianism, Buddhism, and Christianity into oneness, and he comes to this world as Chongdoro, or second coming of Buddha and Christ. He comes as the true parents of all world's people, and he comes as the eldest son of God and King of all kings. It is also written in the Messianic qualification in the Korean book of prophecy. He comes out with the combined religion of East and West as a branch, and when the way of the white cross appears, there will come many invalids, handicapped people. He is well known in both in the east and west. He comes from the peninsular country on the corner of the eastern continent. The Holy Man comes from the east. He will come to bring peace to the world. This messianic qualification is found in the Korean book of prophecy, Hyuk An Yoru Chungamro. Ito yung book na yon. Hong Suji Masumro. Nasa pages 93 to 96 siya. So, dito yun natin makikita yung messianic qualification or messianic prophecy that was written sa mga dynasty pa siya before pa dumating si Father. Translate lang siya. Ito yung translation. So, sabi ni Father, I have worked to bring God's love and truth from the family to the world. And I and my wife now stand as the true parents of humankind. Ito yung sinabi ni Father sa speech niya noong 1993. And this is to me as a member, and as I learn about the principle, I do believe that through Father and through Mother, the Reverend Sang Myung Moon and Dr. Hak Jae-fan Moon are the true parents and the second coming of the Messiah.